Thank you very much. Hello, and once again, welcome to this webinar, Enhancing the Legal Frameworks for Human Genetics and Genomics, Potential Changes and Recommendations. My name is Slokenberga, and I'm a Siena researcher on legal issues in human genetics and genomics from Uppsala University in Sweden. For today's webinar, we have a twofold aim. First, to share with you Siena draft strategies for enhancing the legal frameworks for human genetics and genomics. This part is based on the draft document that was made available to those of you who had registered early for the webinar. I will briefly talk there about how our proposed strategies fit in Siena objectives and present key principles that are steering it. And then I will move on to addressing key proposals that are shaping our strategies and present the changes that, in our view, are necessary or desirable in the existing legal frameworks at the international, EU, and national levels for making Siena proposals work. Our second aim for today is, and accordingly the second point of today's agenda, is to receive stakeholder input in our work. And in Siena, we've taken a broad approach to defining who our stakeholders are. And all our webinar participants are regarded as such. So please know that your input is very welcome, disregarding whether or not you have had the chance to look at the draft document that was made available. As part of Siena work on LC in human genetics and genomics in 2018 and 19, we examined the legal frameworks that are shaping the area within and outside the European Union. We looked at key human rights legal orders, 12 national legal orders across the globe, as well as the European Union. This task of Siena, where we are now, is intended to draw on these findings as well as some recent developments in the field and deliver potential changes that are needed in the existing legal frameworks at the international, EU, and national levels in order to create an environment in which Siena proposals for ethical and human rights respectful human genetics and genomics applications could be implemented most effectively. These proposals are developed by another task within Siena. However, in close collaboration with that task, we have been able to identify key principles that these proposals will rest on. I will talk about those principles in a minute. As you may know, Siena project has been working simultaneously on three key technologies of high societal impact, and human genetics and genomics is only one of them. While analytical work has been conducted separately for each of these areas, our work has been shaped by the same methodological principles, and therefore when submitting our conclusions to the Commission, our findings will be merged into one document. So now let me move on to the key principles that Siena has for enhancing the legal frameworks for the area. First, as personalized medicine advances, we see the potential in creating a new human right, a right to genetic data, but we acknowledge that it is a long-term aspiration. In our vision, this right would be closely linked or even entail some health-related claims and will be related to the right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its applications. Other than that, we base our proposals on the existing human rights. We believe that, first of all, they should be used as a starting point in shaping the legal responses to new and emerging technologies in the field. We have found in our work that many of the existing legal frameworks are not capable of responding to technological advances. This is very explicit at the national levels. We believe that this should be tackled. We have found in our analysis that non-health related applications of human genetic and genomic technologies pose risks. For example, non-medical genetic testing of a child could infringe on such rights as the child's right to self-determination, privacy, and right not to know, as well as put at stake child's interest in open future. Therefore, we believe that regulation of non-health applications of human genetic and genomic technologies is crucial. The area of human genetics and genomics is rich with hard and soft law documents and policy instruments. We believe that appropriate mechanisms need to be established in order for ethics to become an integral part and continuous reflective part of the conduct of science and clinical practice. Therefore, our proposal is to strengthen the existing frameworks. And finally, we believe that enhanced research and development in the field achieved through ensuring the necessary preconditions for furthering research and innovation and reducing regulatory hurdles and unnecessary fragmentation is needed. Now, having these 6 proposals in mind, we have suggested some changes at the international, regional, and national level, and I will start by clarifying our proposals for the international level. In our work for the international level, we focused on the United Nations and its agencies, as well as the Council of Europe. Both of these legal orders have made several notable contributions in responding to challenges that human genetic and genomic technologies present to human rights. However, we have also identified that there are gaps which could become hurdles in the uptake and effective implementation of SIENA proposals. We have identified several necessary or desired changes and grouped them in priority levels. We've classified 3 interventions as urgent to further ethics and human rights respect to human genetic and genomic technology applications. First, we believe that continued interpretive guidance regarding how the existing frameworks respond to new and emerging technologies is necessary. Secondly, we believe that human rights challenges relating to human genetics and genomics shall be addressed in the interpretation of the existing human rights instruments, for example, through general comments, through treaty follow-ups, including recommendations to the states. Finally, we believe that international legal orders should continue promoting the uptake of the existing human rights instruments, specifically addressing the question of genetics and genomics. One of such examples is the additional protocol on genetic testing at the Council of Europe level that is suffering low levels of ratification. Recently, the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights at the UN level has explained the content of the right to science. We believe that greater emphasis in explaining this right needs to be placed on the new emerging technologies in human genetics and genomics, and that this should be addressed as high priority intervention. Likewise, in overseeing compliance with the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, particular attention to this right and human genetic and genomic technologies needs to be given. And here we see that urgent and high priorities interplay in our proposals. As a low priority activity, but not because of lack of importance, but because lack of time it could take, we've classified the following 2 interventions. First, the necessity to set up mechanisms that further research and ensure ethical oversight of human genetic and genomic technologies at all stages. More specifically, our SIENA colleagues in Task 2.7, and the deliverable is publicly available, have proposed creation of a patient's ombudsman for furthering research and development in the field, whilst ensuring protection of the research participants and ethics compliance. SIENA argues that such a platform could create safe research space and could be used as means to further the right to science. Secondly, we believe that a new human rights treaty for the area of human genetics and genomics should be adopted. This proposal is not new. At the core of the calls have been such questions as data sharing for scientific research purposes, adequate safeguards in that regard, as well as the question of human genetic modifications. If such a treaty is considered, then we also would argue that the right to genomic Data and associated rights, including prohibition of discrimination, right to health, right to science, right to education, should also be accounted for in such a proposal. These proposals that Siena puts forward for the international level could face different hurdles. While interpretation and oversight might seem simple and straightforward, it is so only on the surface. Our analysis of different national legal frameworks flags potential difficulties in getting consensus on core issues to address and how they should be addressed. The further we go in our proposals, the more explicit tension between shared values and national aspirations emerges. It is a key challenge that, in our view, the international level will face when acting on furthering ethical and human rights respectful genetic and genomic technology applications. At the European Union level, several of the existing legal frameworks already apply to human genetic and genomic technologies, and of course, fundamental rights insofar as those secondary laws apply. Key areas of secondary laws are clinical trials and advanced therapy medicinal products, for example, gene therapy, data protection, for example, for the questions relating to genetic data and research, in vitro diagnostic medical devices, for example, relating to genetic and genomic analysis. Likewise, we believe that the area of medical devices is relevant, for example, when it comes to such technologies as ultrasound. We have found that capabilities of these secondary laws to respond to challenges that human genetic and genomic technologies present are rather constrained. Examples of these constraints are the existing legal frameworks in which these documents operate, their object and purpose, as well as the legal basis on which they were adopted. For example, the area of advanced therapy medicinal products is argued to have limited responsiveness to non-medical applications. We see that considerable effects could be actually reached through interpretation. However, we've also made a call for using legislative avenue to further Siena aims, and even accounted for a potential treaty change. When it comes to the urgent level, we've argued that interpretation and oversight of the current secondary law frameworks needs to continue. It requires active and high quality work of the involved actors. Likewise, it requires that the European Commission is alert for the lack of compliance at the national level and is ready to act. We believe that a clear EU stand on human genetics and genomics technologies is crucial for stability and transparency of the area. Such a document needs to be prioritized, and it might well take a soft law form. Already now, ethics is part of the requirements in some areas. For example, clinical trials, studies relating to in vitro medical devices under the new in vitro medical devices regulation. We believe that stronger emphasis on ethics monitoring is necessary, including overcoming fragmentations, as well as ethics as an integral part of health technology assessment should be furthered. Finally, we also we share the view that GDPR presented opportunities for scientific research, but at the same time, we are also aware of the challenges that it created for collaboration because of fragmentation. We believe that this fragmentation and uncertainties regarding genetic data protection need to be resolved. Likewise, data sharing avenues between the EU and third countries for research purposes need to be revisited. We acknowledge that the European Union has already done a lot in furthering the area of research and development, for example, through European research infrastructures such as BBMRI, as well as generous funding allocations. What in our view is missing is a coordinated action for the area of human genetics and genomics for further scientific developments. It could be as part of an agency or a body on biomedical technologies generally. We believe that it is the right time to act now, and it should be classified as medium-term priority by the European Union. Finally, COVID-19 has showed that there is a need for European Health Union. If the European Union is acting on it, questions that are relating to human genetic and genomic technologies should be streamlined. We classify this as low priority due to the time development that development of European Health Union would require, not because of we would believe that it is not an important action. We acknowledge that these proposals might not necessarily be easy to implement. Some of those relate to areas that are of high sensitivity to the member states, and there could be considerable reluctance to give them up. Others relate to considerable financial resources. In either case, it is our belief that these changes should not be a power play between the European Union and member states. In our view, at the core of any decisions should be placed the European Union citizen, and any changes that are made should be there to further the citizens' rights and interests. It is not only the international and the EU levels that need to act, but those are also national legal orders. Sienna has identified that often national legal orders respond to human genetic and genomic technologies in some way. However, the scope of application of these laws could be limited to tackling medical application only, or even parts of it. While we cannot preclude, of course, that some countries have made deliberate choices, for others, the unresponsiveness clearly relates to the fact that laws are quite simply outdated. Therefore, we believe that it is urgently necessary that national legal orders review regulatory frameworks and enforcement mechanisms regularly, and they test the capacity to respond to challenges that human genetic and genomic technologies present. It is an ongoing task and not a one-off thing. And here I can share the example put forward by our French colleagues, where they've reported that national laws are revised periodically to respond to new advances in the field of biology and medicine. We have classified free activities with high importance. First, where necessary, we believe that relevant amendments to the existing laws need to be made, or new laws need to be passed at the national level. We have found that some states have different, even contradicting responses to similar human genomics related questions. Therefore, it is suggested that member states should streamline genetics and genomics in research and development and medical care, and have clear governance approaches. And finally, within the European Union, national legal orders are responsible in part for the fragmentation of the regulatory landscape on many questions. Genetic data governance, research governance in that regard is just one of those examples. We believe that the national legal orders should review the necessity for individual approaches and act where this fragmentation is accidental and member states do not have good reasons in upholding their choices. In order to further research and development and enable national legal orders to have adequate regulatory responses, capacity building needs also to take place. We believe that as a medium-term priority, designation of an authority that is responsible for human genetics and genomics that could help law and policy makers to make informed and on science and LC-based decisions in the field is crucial. An example of such an authority is, for example, already in Sweden, where the Swedish Gene Technology Advisory Board is tasked to monitor developments in the field and oversee ethical issues and give advice on the use of gene technologies. Overall, we believe that the national legal orders can do a lot in furthering ethical and human rights respectful human genetics and genomics technology applications. First, to resolve individual challenges, and then we can discuss taking further steps to strengthen the area. In conclusion, Siena believes that only a joint action of all three levels is necessary for creating an environment for ethical and human rights respectful genetics and genomics applications. Capacity building and joint actions are needed to further research and development and enable people to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its applications. It is an area of high societal impact where national legal orders cannot be led on their own. We are of the opinion that a lot can be achieved through interpretation and effective enforcement of the existing regulations at the EU and national levels, and through deliberate regulatory responses at the national level. However, by no means we can argue that it will be an easy road to take for all three levels involved. Thank you very much for being with us for this first part of the webinar. Now it's time to move on to the second part of the webinar, which is the discussion part. In this part, we would love to hear your comments on the free Siena questions that were made publicly available, and I will go through them in a minute. And then we will open the floor for other comments you might have. Our first question is, what are the key human rights and societal impacts of human genetic and genomic technologies that should be addressed by regulation? Our second question is, what changes in the legal frameworks are needed to make development and use of new and emerging human genetic and genomic technologies compliant with human rights and societal values? And finally, what are the main difficulties in improving the legal frameworks for new and emerging technologies in the field? The draft document that we shared with you is a work in progress, and any reflections you might have on these questions or any other insights would be of great value to us. So after these 3 questions, we will open the floor to general discussion.